I never thought I'd be that guy. The paranoid husband, the one who overanalyzes every little thing, searching for signs that shouldn't be there. But sometimes, you don't go looking for the truth. The truth finds you. It all started with small things, things that at first seemed meaningless. Little changes in her behavior. The way she smiled at her phone, that soft smirk like she was reading something or someone. I'd ask, "What's so funny?" She'd just shake her head. "Oh, nothing. Just a meme." But she'd tilt her phone away. Just slightly. Just enough for me not to see. At first, I ignored it. We trust the people we love, right? But then there was the perfume. She started wearing it more often, not just when we were going out, but even when she was just staying home. She'd be in leggings and a t-shirt, no plans to leave the house. Yet she smelled like she had just walked out of a high-end boutique. "Who's it for?" I joked one day, expecting her to laugh. She didn't. Instead, she just shrugged. "I just like smelling good." That was the first crack. Then I started noticing how she would get dressed up for seemingly no reason. Before, she'd spend Saturdays in sweats, messy bun, no makeup. But suddenly, she was fixing her hair, putting on lip gloss just to watch TV in the living room. And then came the excuses. "I need to run to the store. I'm meeting Sarah for coffee." Oh, I just lost track of time. It never seemed suspicious until I started paying attention. She'd come home smiling, like she had a secret, and then came the plumber. It was supposed to be a simple service call. A leak under the sink, nothing more. I was at work when she called him. I didn't even think twice about it. Until that night. She seemed different. There was this energy about her, almost too cheerful, like she was trying to overcompensate. She kept looking at her phone, but when I walked into the room, she locked the screen so fast. It was like she was hiding state secrets. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded a little too quickly. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" Something was off. I could feel it in my gut. That night, I laid in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. The giggles, the perfume, the phone tilting, and now the plumber. It didn't make sense, but Sue, it would. And when it did, I would wish I had never found out. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. Just another ordinary day, another minor inconvenience in our lives. A pipe had burst under the kitchen sink. Happens all the time, right? She called a plumber while I was at work, took care of it, no problem. Or so I thought. That evening, I came home at the usual time. The house smelled different. Not like dinner cooking or her usual lavender candles. No, it was something else, a faint mix of cologne and sweat. But it was subtle, just enough to make me second-guess myself. Maybe I was imagining things. She greeted me at the door. Too quickly. Normally, she'd be in the middle of something. Watching TV, scrolling on her phone, lost in thought. But this time, she was standing there, waiting, like she knew I was about to walk in. And then I noticed her smile. It wasn't her usual smile, the one I fell in love with. It was forced a little too wide, a little too bright. Like someone hiding a secret and hoping they don't slip up. I leaned in to kiss her, and for the first time in years, she turned her face slightly. Just enough so that my lips landed on her cheek instead of her mouth. My stomach tightened. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She nodded. Too quickly. Too eagerly. "Yeah, why wouldn't it be?" she said, her tone just a little too high-pitched, her voice carrying a nervous edge. I studied her for a moment. She wasn't meeting my eyes, just fidgeting, shifting her weight from foot to foot. I glanced around the kitchen. The sink was fixed, the floor was dry, everything was in place. Too in place. Like someone had cleaned up in a hurry. And then I saw it. On the counter, next to the coffee maker, there was a glass, half full of water. But here's the thing. She never drank from a glass. She always used a tumbler, one of those insulated ones with a straw. It was a small detail, something that wouldn't mean anything to anyone else. But to me, it felt wrong. I looked back at her. Her arms were crossed over her stomach, her fingers lightly gripping the fabric of her shirt, a nervous habit. "How'd it go?" I asked, watching her carefully. She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but long enough for me to notice. "Oh, fine. He was nice. Fixed everything pretty quickly." "Yeah." She nodded again, too eagerly. "Yeah, super professional." That was the first red flag. She wasn't the type to comment on whether a plumber was nice or professional. She would usually just say, "Yeah, he fixed it," in a story. And then, as if realizing she was overselling it, she quickly changed the subject. "You hungry?" I was thinking of ordering Thai tonight. I felt my stomach twist. She was deflecting, and at that moment, I realized something wasn't right. But I had no proof. Not yet. So I played along. "Yeah, Thai sounds good." I kissed her on the cheek again, this time lingering just long enough to feel the way her body tensed up. And as I walked away, I made a silent promise to myself. I was going to find out what the hell was really going on. A few days later, I was sitting in my office, mindlessly scrolling through our bank statements, checking our usual expenses. Grocery store runs, gas station stops, Netflix, utility bills. Everything looked normal. And then I saw it, a $500 charge from the plumber. I frowned. That didn't make sense. I knew a thing or two about home repairs. A simple leak fix under the sink? That's a $100 job, maybe $150 max. I had a friend who was a contractor, and I had seen him do similar repairs in under an hour. So why the hell was this guy charging us $500? I clicked on the transaction details, feeling my pulse pick up. No company name, no official invoice, just a generic charge under some random name. That's when I felt it, that cold weight in my stomach. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. My mind was racing, piecing things together. The weird behavior, the nervous smile, the way she tilted her phone away from me. I needed to ask her. The confrontation. That evening, I waited until after dinner. I wanted to catch her off guard, see her reaction when she wasn't prepared. We were sitting on the couch, the TV playing in the background, but I wasn't paying attention. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the transaction, and held it up. "Hey, babe, quick question." She turned to me, smiling. "Yeah." I pointed to the charge. $500 for the plumber? What exactly did he fix? For a split second, her expression didn't change. But I caught it, a flicker of something. Surprise? Panic? It was there. And then it was gone, replaced by a casual shrug. "Oh yeah," she said, glancing away. "He said it was a complicated job." A complicated job. I let the words hang between us, waiting to see if she'd add anything else. But she didn't. She just kept scrolling through her phone, pretending like she hadn't just thrown a bullshit excuse at me. I leaned in. "Complicated how?" She hesitated just for a second. "I don't know, babe. Pipes and stuff. I'm not a plumber." The way she said it, too dismissive, like she was trying to shut down the conversation. That's what made my stomach twist. I didn't push it. Not yet. Instead, I nodded slowly and let it drop. But inside, my mind was racing. I replayed everything from that day. The weird energy when I got home. The way she had been too cheerful, too eager to change the subject. Now, the overcharged bill with no explanation. It wasn't adding up. I decided to check something. While she was in the shower, I grabbed my laptop and looked up the plumber's name from the charge. I expected a company website, maybe a Yelp review. But there was nothing. No business listing. No phone number. No website. Just a random guy's name. That's when it hit me. What if he wasn't a plumber at all? My hands felt clammy as I stared at the screen. Because if he wasn't a plumber, then who the hell was he? It had been a week since I found that suspicious charge, and I hadn't mentioned it again. I played it cool. I acted normal. But inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My wife had been acting strange for days, more distant, more distracted. She wasn't sneaking around with her phone as much, But there was this weird relief in her body language, like she thought the danger had passed. Like she thought I had let it go. But I hadn't. I just needed proof. And then on a random Thursday afternoon, I got it. I had a big meeting scheduled at work, but at the last minute, it was postponed. Normally, I'd stay and finish up some reports, but for some reason, something told me to go home. Call it instinct. Call it paranoia. Call it whatever you want. But as I turned onto our street, my heart stopped. Because right there, parked in our driveway, was his truck. The same one I had seen in our transaction history. The same one my wife had so casually brushed off as just the plumber. Only this time, there was no plumbing emergency. I pulled over to the curb instead of driving up. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles went white. My breath was shallow, my pulse pounding in my ears. I sat there for a moment, staring at the house. Everything looked normal. The curtains were half drawn, the lights were off in most of the rooms, except one, the bedroom. I swallowed hard. I knew I shouldn't jump to conclusions. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe he had forgotten something from last time. Maybe my wife was just being nice, letting him in for coffee. Maybe. But deep down, I already knew. I stepped out of my car, moving quietly, slowly. My heart was hammering so hard in my chest that I thought it would give me away. The closer I got to the house, the more I could feel that horrible, sinking weight in my stomach. I crept up the driveway and stood near the truck. It was unlocked. The windows were slightly cracked. I glanced inside, expecting to see tools, maybe a clipboard, some invoices, something a real plumber would have. But there was nothing. No toolbox, no wrenches, no paperwork. Just a leather jacket thrown across the passenger seat and an empty fast food cup sitting in the console. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a work visit. I took a deep breath and walked up to the front door, careful not to make a sound. I pressed my ear against the wood, listening. At first, silence. Then a soft laugh. Muffled voices. A man's voice. His voice. And then her voice. Low. Playful. Teasing. Something inside me snapped. I reached for the doorknob, my breath catching in my throat. I had two choices. Walk in and catch them in the act. Or wait. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to think. If I caught them now, it would be my word against theirs. They'd make excuses, deny it, twist the story. I needed something more. I needed proof. So I stepped back. I turned, walked away, got back into my car. And as I sat there, gripping the steering wheel with shaking hands, a plan started to form in my head. This wasn't over. Not even close. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, closing the door behind me as quietly as I could. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The house felt off, too quiet, too still. Normally, I'd hear the faint hum of the TV, the clicking of her nails on her phone screen, or the soft rustling of her moving around. But now, silence. That eerie, suffocating kind of silence that tells you something isn't right. I stood in the entryway for a moment, listening, waiting, and then a sound, a faint rustling, a whisper. I held my breath. Then a giggle, low, soft, playful. And it wasn't just any giggle. It was her giggle, the one she used when she was flirting. It came from upstairs. More murmuring followed, a low male voice, barely audible, just enough for me to know I wasn't imagining it. A sudden rush of adrenaline surged through me. My throat tightened, my fists clenched. This was real. I took a slow, careful step forward, the floor creaking beneath my weight. The voices stopped for a second. I froze. Did they hear me? A moment passed. Then another. Then more movement. The shifting of fabric. A bed creaking. A low chuckle. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight, I thought I might throw up. I looked toward the staircase, my mind racing. I could march up there right now, kick the door open, and see it for myself. But what would that do? They'd lie. They'd scramble for excuses. They'd twist it into something innocent, make me look crazy. I needed proof. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and opened the camera. I switched it to video mode and started recording as I slowly, carefully moved up the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, my breathing shallow. As I reached the top, I could see the bedroom door, half open. The soft glow of the bedside lamp spilled into the hallway. And then I saw it, a shadow moving inside, a tall figure standing close to the bed. And then, her voice, breathy and soft. "You should go soon, he'll be home any minute." My grip on my phone tightened. My pulse roared in my ears. And that's when I knew this wasn't some misunderstanding. This was betrayal. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I stood there just outside the bedroom, my heart hammering in my chest. My fingers were twitching, my breath shallow. Every instinct inside me was screaming to kick that door open, to rip the truth out of the moment. But I didn't, because if I barged in now, she'd deny it. They always deny it. She'd gaslight me, twist the truth, make me second-guess my own sanity. And him? He'd just grab his things and leave, pretending nothing happened. I needed more than just suspicion. I needed proof. Undeniable proof. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound, then turned and walked downstairs, my mind spinning with what to do next. Every part of me wanted to confront her, to scream, to demand answers. But instead, I went to the garage. Buried under a pile of old cables and unused electronics was a small security camera I had bought years ago when I was thinking about setting up a home surveillance system. I never got around to installing it. Until now. I dusted it off, checked the battery, and tested the feed on my phone. Perfect. The next challenge? Setting it up without her knowing. I waited. The next morning, she left the house as usual, saying she was meeting a friend for coffee. I knew better than to believe it. As soon as she pulled out of the driveway, I went to work. I walked into our bedroom, feeling a strange mix of emotions. This was supposed to be our safe place. The room where we whispered secrets at night, where we laughed, where we promised forever. Now, it felt like enemy territory. I looked around, searching for the perfect spot. It had to be somewhere discreet, somewhere she wouldn't think to check. Then I saw it, the bookshelf in the corner. One of the decorative plants on the second shelf was the perfect hiding spot. I carefully adjusted the camera inside the leaves, making sure it had a clear view of the bed. Next, I set up the motion detection feature. As soon as any movement happened in the room, I'd get an alert. And then the final test, I waved my hand in front of the camera. My phone buzzed immediately. It was working. I took a deep breath, stepping back. This was it. If I was wrong, I'd feel like the biggest paranoid idiot on the planet. But if I was right, I'd catch her. And then there would be no more doubts. No more pretending. No more marriage. All that was left to do now was wait. That night, I sat alone in my car, parked a few blocks away from our house. My fingers were ice cold as I clutched my phone, staring at the notification on my screen. Motion detected, master bedroom. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry, my stomach twisting in a knot so tight I thought I might throw up. This was it. I had been preparing myself for this moment all day. But now that it was here, I wasn't sure I wanted to know the truth. What if I was wrong? What if it really was just a paranoid fantasy in my head? But deep down, I knew. I tapped the screen, opening the live feed. At first, there was nothing. Just the dimly lit bedroom. The soft glow from the bedside lamp casting shadows across the walls. Then I saw her. She walked into frame, wearing something she never wore for me anymore. A silk robe, the one I had bought her years ago, back when she still cared. She moved to the bed, sitting on the edge, checking her phone, waiting. And then he walked in. My chest tightened, my breath catching in my throat. There he was, the so-called plumber. The man who had charged $500 for a service that never happened. The same truck I saw parked outside my home earlier that week. And now he was inside my bedroom. I felt my grip on the phone tighten, my knuckles turning white. I should have stopped watching. I should have turned it off. But I couldn't. I was frozen, forced to witness the worst kind of betrayal. She looked up at him and smiled. The same smile she used to give me. She reached for his hand, pulling him closer. I could hear her voice, soft, teasing, the same way she used to whisper to me late at night. Then she kissed him. My stomach dropped. Not a hesitant kiss. Not a mistake. A deep, slow, familiar kiss. The kind of kiss that says, I've done this before. I'll do it again. My ears were ringing. I could barely breathe. My hands were trembling so violently that the phone almost slipped from my grip. But I kept watching. I watched as she ran her fingers through his hair, the way she used to do with me. I watched as she whispered something in his ear, something that made him laugh. I watched as she leaned into him, her body pressing against his like it was second nature. And that's when I felt it, a physical pain, a crushing, suffocating weight in my chest, like someone had reached inside and ripped my heart out. This wasn't just cheating. This was intimacy. This was routine. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? Years? I wanted to scream, to punch something, to storm into that house and tear everything apart. But instead, I just sat there, staring, silent, breaking. I was nothing but an audience to my own humiliation. And then, as if the universe hadn't already crushed me enough, she said something that made my blood run cold. She pulled away from him slightly, smirking. And then, in the same playful voice she once used with me, she whispered, "We have to be quick. He'll be home soon." My world shattered. She wasn't just cheating. She was cheating, knowing I was coming back, knowing she had limited time, knowing she had done this before. She had planned this, planned my betrayal. And in that moment, as I sat there in the dark, watching the woman I loved become a stranger before my eyes, I realized something. I wasn't just losing my wife. I had already lost her. The next morning, I woke up before she did. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every second of the video from last night. Every whisper, every laugh, every touch. The betrayal sat in my chest like a lead weight, suffocating me. And yet, when she stirred beside me, stretching with that same sleepy innocence I used to find beautiful, I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I played my part. I turned to her, forcing a smile. "Morning." She smiled back, oblivious. She kissed me lightly on the lips, the same lips she had been kissing him with hours before. I almost recoiled. Almost. Instead, I kissed her back. She got up, went about her morning routine as if nothing had changed, humming to herself, pouring coffee, checking her phone with that same knowing smirk. And I just watched. I watched her lie to my face without even knowing she was doing it. I watched the way she carried herself, so confident, so secure in the belief that I was still her fool. But not anymore. I had a plan. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. When she left for work, I didn't say much. Just kissed her goodbye like I always did, watching her walk out the door. The same routine, the same life. Except this time, I was in control. I spent the day waiting, the hours crawling by like torture. My hands itched to send the video to her right then and there to let her see what I knew. But I wanted to see her face. I wanted to watch her realize she had lost everything. That evening, she walked through the front door, her usual warm smile in place. "Hey, babe," she called casually, kicking off her heels. "How was your day?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stood in the middle of the living room, my phone in my hand. She noticed immediately. Something was off. She hesitated. "What's wrong?" I didn't speak. I just hit play. The video filled the silence between us, the soft whispers, the rustling sheets, the giggles, her voice. Her face drained of color instantly. She took a shaky step back, her mouth opening, closing, opening again like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. She gasped, hands flying to her mouth. I can explain, but there was nothing to explain. I let the video keep playing. I let her hear herself whispering his name. Let her see the way she reached for him, kissed him, touched him like she used to touch me. She shook her head, tears already welling in her eyes. Oh my God! Oh my God! I tilted my head, studying her reaction. She wasn't crying because she felt guilty. She was crying because she got caught. I let out a slow breath. How long? My voice was eerily calm. She swallowed hard. Babe, please, it wasn't. How long? She hesitated, and that was all the answer I needed. If it had been a one-time mistake, she would have blurted it out immediately. But she was stalling, trying to soften the blow, which meant it wasn't just once. It was never just once. I felt the anger rise, the betrayal burning in my veins like fire. But I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I stepped closer, holding up my phone. Don't bother lying. I have it all. Every second. Every sound. You were never going to tell me, were you? She let out a small, choked sob. I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. Didn't want to hurt me? I gestured to the phone. You sure as hell didn't care about that last night. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't. Her face crumpled. I love you. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. No. I let the word hang between us, final and absolute. Then, without another word, I turned around, walked to the door, and left. I didn't look back. She wasn't worth it. I sat in my car that night, staring at my phone, the video still open on the screen. My fingers hovered over the send button, my pulse pounding in my ears. I could ruin him. I could send this to his family, his job, his friends, destroy his entire life with one tap. But I didn't, because he wasn't worth it. I had already lost everything that mattered. My marriage, my trust, my peace. He had taken that from me. But what he wouldn't take? My dignity. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to show up at his doorstep, fists clenched, demanding a fight. No, I was going to be smarter than that. I found his number in the call history. Yes, she had saved it. Under a fake name, of course. I smirked. Sloppy. I typed out a message. Simple. Cold. Unmistakable. I attached the video and wrote just 5 words. Stay away, or this goes public. Then I hit send. I sat there, watching the 3 little dots appear on my screen, knowing exactly what was happening on the other end. He was probably lying in bed, his phone buzzing on the nightstand. Maybe he thought it was her. Another midnight text, another I can't stop thinking about last night. But then he saw my name, and when he opened it, his world collapsed. The dots disappeared. No reply. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Then, finally, a single message. I'm sorry. Please, don't do this. I laughed under my breath. Pathetic. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He got the message. The next morning, I checked his company's website out of curiosity. His name was gone. His profile erased. I called the office, pretending to be a potential client. Sorry, the receptionist said. He's no longer with us. I hung up and let out a slow, satisfied breath. He had quit his job. Just like that. Disappeared. Good. Because if he hadn't, I would have made sure he did. I didn't waste time. The morning after I confronted her, I packed my bags. No drawn-out conversations. No fake apologies. No, we can fix this speeches. She sat on the bed, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. Please, she whispered. Can we just talk? I zipped up my suitcase without looking at her. Talk? About what? How you planned your hookups around my schedule. How you laughed with them in our bed. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't interested in her excuses. She had made her choices, and now so had I. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, feeling nothing but cold, hard clarity. She called. I didn't answer. She texted. I didn't read them. For the first time in a long time, I was free. Or so I thought. Because a month later, just when I was finally starting to breathe again, when the nightmares were starting to fade, I got a message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to read it. And when I did, my blood ran cold. You're not the only one she cheated on. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering in my chest. What the hell? Before I could respond, another text came through. She did the same thing to me. Same lies. Same fake plumbing emergency. I found your number through an old message thread. We need to talk. My hands went numb. It was another husband. Another man who had walked the same road I had, lived the same betrayal. My wife, my ex-wife, wasn't just a cheater. She was a serial cheater. The late nights, the phone tilting, the perfume, the extra work meetings that never made sense. It had never been just one man. I had spent years loving someone who never truly existed. I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone. I could ignore the message. Move on. Try to forget. Or I could find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. I took a deep breath and typed 2 words. Tell me everything.